In today's video, we will cover two horrifying caving disasters. Our first story begins with a small decision, an improvisation, so minor it seemed harmless at the time. But in the depths of the cave, that single choice would spiral into a deadly mistake, while the second story points out on how abandonment in the depths of the earth can lead to disturbing, tragic ends. As always, viewer discretion is advised. April 26, 1999 was supposed to be another routine technical dive for Guido Gudenzi. Instead, it became the day a single moment of confusion nearly cost the 29-year-old his life in Florida's Dipolar Spring. Gudenzi wasn't inexperienced. With 4 years of cave diving behind him, he knew the unforgiving demands of technical diving, where every breath and every decision carried life or death consequences. He had trained extensively in mixed gas diving, a complex method allowing divers to reach depths impossible with standard scuba gear. That morning, Gudenzi descended into Dipolar Spring alongside fellow divers Simone Rancoli and Sandra Dirksen. Their goal was an immense underwater chamber resting 190 feet below the surface, around 58 meters down. At that depth, the pressure was nearly 6 times greater than at the surface, drastically altering how gases interacted with the human body. The 3 divers carried multiple gas tanks, each filled with carefully calculated mixes of oxygen, nitrogen, and helium for specific depths. This wasn't casual diving with a single tank. Technical diving demanded precision, where using the wrong gas at the wrong depth could be instantly fatal. Each diver also carried a dedicated oxygen bottle for their final decompression stop. Standard protocol required leaving these oxygen tanks at the 20-foot decompression stop, where breathing pure oxygen was safe. This wasn't optional. It was a critical safety rule designed to prevent fatal mistakes. Pure oxygen becomes toxic beyond 66 feet, 20 meters. At such depths, increased pressure turns life-sustaining oxygen into a deadly poison, capable of triggering sudden convulsions and drowning within seconds. Every trained diver knew this rule by heart, which made what happened next all the more shocking. Gudenzi broke protocol. Instead of leaving his oxygen bottle at the 20-foot decompression stop, he carried it with him into the depths. Whether to keep it close or out of concern for equipment placement, the choice would prove fatal. The descent itself went smoothly. The 3 divers moved with precision, their lights slicing through the still, dark water. Around them, ancient limestone walls bore the marks of millions of years of erosion, forming surreal passages few had ever seen. At 190 feet, 58 meters down, they reached their destination. The vast underwater chamber opened like a submerged cathedral, its sheer walls fading into the darkness beyond their beams. At this crushing depth, unprotected lungs would collapse instantly, but their specialized gear allowed them to breathe, suspended in an alien world of silence and pressure. They spent time photographing the chamber and studying its formations, surrounded by absolute silence, broken only by the steady rhythm of their breathing gear. In this alien world, every breath mattered, every movement had consequences. Once their exploration was complete, they began their ascent, the most dangerous phase of any deep dive. Gases compressed under extreme pressure had to be released slowly to avoid decompression sickness. Each stop was critical, allowing their bodies to adjust gradually. Their first major stop came at 120 feet, about 37 meters below the surface. There they hovered motionless in the cold water, starting the long decompression process. The surface felt impossibly far above them, with several more stops between them and safety. At the 120-foot decompression stop, Gudenzi made a fatal mistake. For reasons no one would ever know, he switched from his primary breathing mix to the pure oxygen bottle he had carried from the surface. Whether it was confusion or stress, his decision proved catastrophic. The instant pure oxygen entered his lungs at that depth, the results were immediate. The extreme pressure turned the oxygen into a toxic dose, overwhelming his system in seconds. His central nervous system was hit hard, triggering sudden oxygen poisoning. Gudenzi's body went into violent convulsions. His limbs thrashed uncontrollably as his nervous system failed under the chemical assault. Within moments, he lost consciousness entirely, and the mouthpiece slipped from his lips, drifting into the clear, silent water.
Rankele and Dirksen watched in shock as their skilled partner slipped into crisis. At 120 feet, 37 meters, they faced every diver's worst nightmare, an unconscious buddy deep underwater with almost no margin for error. Instantly, they switched to emergency mode. Training had prepared them, but the reality was far more brutal. Gudenzi was convulsing violently, unresponsive to any rescue attempt. Without his mouthpiece, he wasn't breathing the gas keeping him alive. They fought desperately to save him, struggling to force the regulator back between his lips as his uncontrolled thrashing made it nearly impossible. Every second drained their strength and burned through their own gas reserves, but they refused to give up, battling both time and the crushing depth around them. The physics of death turned against them. At 120 feet, 37 meters, a rapid ascent wasn't an option. Shooting to the surface would almost certainly trigger fatal decompression sickness. They were trapped by their own decompression schedule, forced to balance their survival while trying to save Gudenzi, an impossible equation underwater. Minutes dragged by as hope faded. Gudenzi remained unresponsive, his convulsions relentless, making rescue breathing impossible. Every attempt failed, and the two divers faced the unbearable truth. Their friend was slipping away right in front of them, and there was nothing they could do. What made it worse was how preventable it was. Oxygen toxicity limits were no mystery. Every technical diver knew pure oxygen was safe only above 66 feet, 20 meters. These protocols existed precisely to stop tragedies like this, yet one critical mistake had sealed Gudenzi's fate. Standard protocol required leaving oxygen bottles at proper decompression stops, specifically to prevent the kind of confusion that killed Gudenzi. By placing them at 20 feet, 6 meters, divers avoided the deadly risk of accidentally breathing pure oxygen too deep. Technical diving left zero room for mistakes. Unlike recreational scuba, where errors might cause inconvenience, a single lapse here could be instantly fatal. The extreme depths, complex gas mixes, and strict decompression schedules created an environment where precision was everything. After exhausting every rescue attempt, Rankele and Dirksen faced a grim reality. Gudenzi was gone, claimed by oxygen toxicity. Now their focus shifted to survival. They had to complete decompression carefully and make it back to the surface, ensuring this tragedy didn't take more lives. The ascent must have felt endless for the survivors. Every decompression stop dragged on, each minute stretching painfully as they replayed the horror of watching Gudenzi slip away. They had no choice but to endure it. Skipping stops would have meant risking their own lives to decompression sickness. It was a cruel paradox, trapped between the need to survive and the helplessness of leaving their friend behind. When Rankele and Dirksen finally surfaced and reported the tragedy, the news rippled through the diving community. Gudenzi had been a seasoned diver with 4 years of cave diving experience under his belt. The idea that someone so skilled could make such a basic error shocked everyone and served as a sobering reminder. In technical diving, even the smallest lapse in judgment at extreme depths can be fatal.
Hidden deep in Mexico's wilderness, Sótano del Barro lures thrill-seekers with its stunning vertical drop, a 764-foot descent into darkness. But on August 22, 1999, this breathtaking cave became the scene of a devastating tragedy. Christy Quintana, a 26-year-old passionate caver, joined fellow explorers Miguel Ángel Blanco, Rocio Medina, Sanchez, Sergio Sanchez Armas, and Alfredo Silva for what was meant to be an unforgettable adventure. After a grueling 2-hour hike through rugged terrain, they finally reached the cave that afternoon. At the entrance, they spotted loose rocks scattered around the edge. Knowing the danger, they cleared the debris and rigged a rope at the lip, preparing for their daunting vertical descent. Miguel,
Christie, Medina, and Sanchez volunteered to explore the cave, while Silva and Sergio remained at the surface to assist if needed. The descent began smoothly. One by one, they vanished into the depths, surrounded by jagged rocks. They explored, documented, and marveled at the cave's beauty, unaware of the danger looming ahead. By nightfall, it was time to climb back. Christie and Miguel went first, following their planned route. But at 10:30 p.m., disaster struck. Christie was about 130 feet below the surface, with Miguel about 50 feet lower when a section of the cave's lip suddenly collapsed. Tons of rock broke free, thundering down the vertical shaft. The deafening roar echoed through the cave. Suspended helplessly on the rope, Christie took the full force of the collapse. Massive rocks slammed into Christie's head, shoulders, and back, shattering her cervical and lumbar vertebrae and leaving her paralyzed from the waist down. Just below, Miguel escaped by pure luck, his position shielding him from the falling debris. At the cave's bottom, Medina and Sanchez stood frozen as the thunderous collapse shook the chamber. Huge boulders crashed down, blocking parts of their exit. Dust and debris filled the air, choking the air and blinding their vision. Regaining his composure, Miguel climbed toward Christie. Her condition was critical. She was conscious, but in excruciating pain, her body trembling from shock. What he saw was devastating. Her legs were lifeless, her body broken by the brutal force of the rocks. Miguel did everything possible, stabilizing Christie on the rope, whispering reassurance, trying to ease her pain, though every strained breath revealed her agony. Below, Medina and Sanchez sensed disaster, but remained trapped, unable to help. Realizing rescue was the only chance, Miguel carefully climbed past Christie and began his ascent through the unstable shaft. Around 11:30 p.m., he reached the surface, where Silva and Sergio were devastated by the news and took a moment to compose themselves before acting. The team acted fast, rigging a makeshift hull system with what little equipment they had. It became a race against time, but without proper pulleys or mechanical gear, progress was agonizingly slow. Worse still, the loose rocks at the cave's lip had to be stabilized before attempting to pull Christie out. Every minute felt critical as they worked desperately. By 2:30 a.m., they had managed to lift her to within 12 feet of the surface. Miguel rappelled back down to guide her over the edge, but when he reached her, dread took over. Christie wasn't breathing. Hours suspended on the rope, combined with severe internal injuries, shock, and harness-induced pathology, a condition that restricts circulation and accelerates fatal outcomes, had claimed her life. Miguel, shattered but resolute, tried to pull Christie's body over the lip, but exhaustion and the unstable terrain made it impossible. With no other choice, Sergio began a grueling 2-hour hike through the darkness to reach their vehicle and call for help. By morning, a rescue team arrived. Meanwhile, Medina and Sanchez remained trapped at the bottom, cut off and helpless for over 16 hours. Hunger, thirst, and the psychological weight of the disaster above pressed heavily on them. By 2 p.m., rescuers reached the 180-foot constriction where rocks from the collapse had lodged. After clearing the path, they descended further, finally reaching Medina and Sanchez, offering food, water, and reassurance. By 5 p.m., the two finally emerged from the cave, exhausted but alive. Yet the relief was overshadowed by the devastating reality Christie hadn't survived. For the survivors, that night would haunt them forever. Could anything have saved her? The rescue report concluded that even immediate intervention might not have changed the outcome. Lowering her to the bottom of the pit might have offered temporary relief, but her injuries were catastrophic. Without advanced medical care, hours away in the remote wilderness, survival was unlikely.